Okay, like I never ever I mean, I have never done this kind of video before, but I am going to be attempting, with my very limited knowledge, talking about transit theory in general. And basically, this video idea came from my friend, so thank you to my friend. He was asking me to help with his assignment, and vaguely, the assignment was about pick a journey that you do quite often, which means like a commute. It can be by, okay, let's say it's by train, right? So you have to do the same journey from the same starting point and the ending point, but with another mode of transportation. Buses in buses in this aspect. And then vaguely, it's about like you have to like compare between uh okay, it's like what kinds of stuff happened during your journey, like what have you experienced, and it's something to do with like space and environment vaguely, like you being transported through spaces. That's just a vague kind of thing. I'm not able to like say it out loud, but this is basically how I'm gonna say it. So obviously I'm not able to copy and paste, right? So my friend basically just came up with these concepts based on the notes he was given, but he paraphrased it into his own words. And I am going to be trying to break it down into simpler words so that you guys are able to understand. So, concept one is about path dependency and friction of distance. Now, at first glance, I don't understand what this means, so let's read. Path dependency. Once infrastructures are built, they constrain and guide future possibilities. So, one example that I could point out when it comes to like this and this is that uh, so one prime example would be I would say this. So let's scroll up a little bit, and then let's just screenshot this thing, and then let's put it into PowerPoint. Okay. Whoops. It's a little too. All right. Okay. So basically, Okay, I'm gonna have to cross-reference. They constrain and guide future possibilities. So basically, if I just say it very simply, PIE is already built. CTE is already built. Your St. Andrews slip roads. I'm sorry, I didn't draw it properly. Your St. Andrews slip roads, which I'm going to draw in pink, they are already built. And because there is already stuff to the south of it and to the north of it, it prevents you from easily expanding the road because there is infrastructure buildings in the way. And likewise, because you already built the CTE, right? It is quite hard to just simply build a road to bridge, let's say, Potong Pasir Avenue 1 to Toa Payoh East. The reason why there's no bridge is because this is the entrance to a school, and then this is like a car park right now. So if you wanted to do that, you would need to somehow find some space to build a link bridge between here and here. And that is really complicated, right? And you want to modify infrastructure. So this is what it means when it says constrain. Now, the whole point about guiding future possibilities, maybe one vague example is that, let's see, this Paya Lebar Air Base, PLAB, is going to move out, right? So, oh my god, how do I put this? Okay, so this area is bounded by Tampines Road, and then vaguely, oh, it's called Tampines Road, I'm sorry, Tampines Avenue 10, Bartley Road East, the flyover. So you have this entire area that you could possibly work with. In fact, if you were smart about it, you could even extend, let's say, uh, Just vaguely. Okay, so pardon me. Vaguely, you could say I'm going to extend Tampines Avenue 5 or maybe 9, but since the road is already like that, it's already planned in this manner. I don't know if this is going to be reserved for green space or what, but let's pretend this thing doesn't exist. You could actually just extend it like okay, realistically maybe something like this. So this is what it means by what you call it. Once infrastructures are built, they constrain and guide, but this is more of like the guiding future possibilities part. I picked PLAB because it's like the most relevant example when it comes to like guiding what's it called again? Guiding future possibilities. And this is not the only example that I can think of. The other one, just basically look at all the new towns. Like Tengah is one of them. Like you have this entire space that's like bounded within PIE, KJE, Brickland Road, and Bukit Batok Road, right? So you have all this space. Yes, it is indeed constraining in a way because you only have this much space to work with, but the way that the existing roads are being laid out, I would say, if I want to be a little bit more specific about it, you already have an existing road, Jurong West Avenue 2, right? And then you also have a Jurong Canal Drive, which is going to become a flyover soon, if I'm not mistaken. And then there's this part, I haven't really looked at it in detail, but then there is like, okay, Choa Chu Kang Avenue 3, going to be an extension here, and then Choa Chu Kang Avenue 6, going to be extended as well. So this is what guiding future possibilities mean. Like, you have roads, you kind of like guide future possibilities with it. Again, this is not the exact shape of the roads, but it's like, conceptually, this is what it means. It's like, you make use of your existing infrastructure, and then you do stuff with it. So this is what it means by, or at least my own interpretation of like guiding future possibilities. The classic case in somewhere is rail corridors. Okay, I talked about roads, but this is more of like rail corridors, fixed, expensive, which is the main point. You have to actually invest into building a train line and durable. They lock in movement patterns for decades. How should I say this? Okay, let's just take a look at Singapore MRT map. And let me see. Okay. What? Okay, not this fake map, but like let's pick one that actually has the okay. Open image, a new tab. Jesus Christ. Ah! Okay, never mind. Like this. So basically, again, I'm so sorry. What my friend means is that lock in movement patterns for decades. And in this example, okay, I know there are official names for these, but it's like green line, you locked in the east-west travel. Red line, you locked in the north-south travel. Purple line, you lock in northeast to the city. Okay, not to the city, but to Dhoby Ghat and Harbourfront. Circle line, you locked in the movement. Crossline line, you are going to lock in the movement. Same goes for JRL. Okay, although JRL is like a little bit jank, but then what the fuck? What the fuck is that pink line? I know it's Tengah line, but it's like, what the hell are they doing with this? Is this even official, or is it like just somebody's creation? Because the alignment just doesn't make sense to me at all. What the hell? What the hell is this? You mean through Telok Blangah? Oh wait, even this Seletar line thingy is fictional. It's not even Kallang. God damn it. I mean Boon King, I believe, but Boon King Bentamir Cup. Nobody needs this link. Okay, never mind. I'm just being I'm just being really judgmental about it. Okay, back to topic. Even downtown line as well. It's like from Bukit Panjang to like downtown. Where is downtown? To downtown, as well as like from Tampines East ish to downtown, and also like Tampines East to Upper Changi Expo, something along those lines. They lock in movement patterns for decades because they are permanent and you cannot just edit a real line. I know Japan has done that before, but it's like in and then they came out with like new true services. But in general, most train lines cannot be edited. Yes, you could add branches to it, but in essence, even the branches they also lock in movement patterns for decades as well. So that's like the main point. Same goes for the LRT and what the fuck else is there that I haven't talked about? Okay, yeah, most of this stuff is just me being like super judgmental about this diagram because I don't trust it. Okay, sorry, back to it. Back to this. Friction of distance. Movement is not only about physical length, okay, but also about the effort that is shaped by topography, infrastructural topology. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with these words. And political decisions. Okay, this is correct. Effort that is shaped by. Okay, so it's like, would you rather take the winding route or would you rather climb up and down a hill just to get to your nearest bus stop? That kind of thing. That explains the friction part. So it's like, yeah, it kind of makes sense in this context. It's like, I don't really know if there's a relevant example, but it's like, see, it's not just natural topography, but it's also infrastructural topology as well. So I could give one example of this. Let me just move my map all the way to Buangkok. You see, newer HDB flats, the way that they're constructed, they kind of restrict like uh, true movement from the ground floor. It's not like the old HDB flats whereby it's easier to cut across or navigate. No, the new HDB blocks or estates, they are literally like a maze. So that's the reason why people didn't want 101 being extended to Bangkok because when you amend the bus service to here and then you skip the stops here, they would complain because there is friction of distance. They based on the infrastructural something something. They don't want to cut across to like the bus stops. If you get what I mean. So yeah, this is basically what it means. I'm just using breaking it down, explaining it in simpler terms. Effective and not if effective, but like effective atmospheres and the skills of commuting. So the relational environments where bodies affect one another on transit, they are material, like temperature, whether your bus aircon is cold or hot, like I'm looking at you, Scania L113 CRL elbows, you guys sucked. Or whether you get like a Convicta aircon. Okay. Vibration. Okay, this doesn't mean the bus actually vibrating. It's another kind of like vibration, or maybe it actually refers to vibration. I'm not sure. Smell, whether the inside of your bus and train smells nice, stuff like that. Obviously, if it's gonna be crowded, it won't smell nice. And even when it's not crowded, do they maintain the interiors of the trains well and stuff like that? And obviously emotional as well, because it's like if you're in an environment that you dislike, be it a bus or a train, you wouldn't enjoy the ride as well, and therefore it is effective. The next one is power and surveillance, which is basically the concept of who has power in the commuting space. In the bus is the bus captain. In the train it's unseen, but it's the depot controller because it's like right now, even NSEWL, which is GOA 3, grade of automation level 3, and then the rest are 4, which means that like the driver doesn't actually have to like press doors open, doors close. It's all mostly automatic and they don't actually have to drive the train. So in Singapore's context, a train is unseen, but it's usually again they are just explaining in like vague terms. OCC, in essence, because whatever happens in OCCs, their inputs, they actually, yes, they use algorithms and stuff like that, but whatever inputs, they would affect train movement in general. So what this means is that like a bus captain is in control of the bus, and the bus drives on the road. Usually the road, if it's not a minor road, it has like many lanes, and the bus captain is able to like filter to different lanes. Every bus ride has variance, but every train ride tends to be more fixed because the train ride is just fixed to rails, whereas buses, yes, they have a fixed route, but technically they can be driven anywhere. So this is basically what this concept is about. And then the last one is mediated mobilities and code slash space. The choice and exercise of movement is the modern age is in the modern age facilitated and mediated by technologies like the bus app. So basically what this means is that you check your bus app, the bus doesn't come. What do? Do you walk to the nearest bus stop? Do you walk to take the train, or do you walk to take a taxi, or do you just walk? That kind of thing. So it's like the bus app is able to help you navigate through your own commute in some sense, if I explain in simpler words. Code and space refers to the digital spaces that only function when software runs. Simply go, or even the bus app, it's like if there are technological issues, obviously you're not able to check the bus app and you're kind of forced to wait for the bus itself, right? So yeah, the bus is still able to run even when, let's say, your trapeze dies. I don't know if the bus is able to run if the NOBE actually dies or not, but I have seen buses running without like. Oh wait, I remember now. There was a bus whereby the nope died, but the DDU, the trapeze, was still functioning. But this meant that like you're not able to tap in or tap out the bus. Basically, essentially, this means like a free ride. But unfortunately, for people who have tapped in prior to the machines breaking down, they unfortunately have to pay full fare. So yeah, it kind of sucks, but I have experienced that. But basically, this is just referring to the exact opposite of what I just said, the things that actually need electricity or technology or whatever to like function. So these are my the exact words from my friend, and he said he wants to replicate a commute that he does daily, but on a different mode of transit, and I need to take few notes for concepts of effective atmospheres, mediated mobilities, and infrastructural power, which is like basically what I explained like over here. So what he's actually gonna do is the sensory log, which is basically sound, temperature, vibration, smell, and all these sorts of things. I mean, it's just examples. I actually kind of think this is like literal right now. Note passenger body language, eye contact versus avoidance, like if they glare at you or if they are like looking at you for help or something along those lines, and record incidents, somebody apologizes, or when the bus emergency brakes, how do passengers react? Do passengers actually become considerate? And then write how you actually feel during the ride. Like on the bus, you also, because the bus driver is a human, right? Unless you can tell me the bus driver is in a furry costume. But basically, the bus driver is a human, and they also interact with passengers as well. So how do they react? And then peer enforcement. It's like basically not just from one human, but from different humans. Like, is anybody talking shit behind your back during the commute or stuff like that? Okay, and log visible land uses unique to bus route. Warehouses, dormitories. Oh, this is where I advise my friend. Like, I actually told them about what this shit. What I'm saying. It's like, what's so significant about a bus route? Like, where does it exactly pass by? The amenities or whatever. So this is basically talking about that. It's yeah, and then note moments. Yes. So this isn't necessarily a demand study or anything. It's more of like how you feel and how other people feel, or including the bus captain during the ride. So note moments where bus doubles back, loops, or stops frequently, and how do you or other passengers or even the bus captain feels as a result of that. Like, does he complain to the OCC, BOCC, or something along those lines? And then bus app prediction versus actual arrival, be it the screens that you see on the bus stops or from your own app, because you know some buses can be undetected, right? Observe how many use phones to track bus progress versus MRT passengers. Note a failure like bus too full, the application lagging, or stuff like that. So basically, this is all the parameters of what my friend is like has to work with, basically. And the rule is that you're not allowed to take MRT because usually he commutes via train. Not that he wants to, but it's the fastest way so that he can reach wherever he wants to reach on time. So no taking shuttle buses, no taking MRT. You're only allowed to bus and walk. But even the walking has to be like a reasonable distance. Like, let's say you walk from the okay, maybe just one example. Like, let's say, oh crap, did I expose him? Fuck, did I expose him? Shit, okay. I don't want to re-record this damn thing again! Okay, but anyway, what was I trying to... Okay, what I was trying to say is that one example is basically... Okay, okay. Oh, I need to get a grip. Basically, so between walking between here and here is fine because it's a reasonable distance, and right now there is like an actual linkway, so to say. So basically, he's not allowed to take MRT or shuttle bus. He has to bus and walk. The reason why I don't want to re-record is because, yes, I do have some material to work with, but I really don't want to re-record. Most of the stuff I say is like unscripted anyway, so sorry. Okay, but basically, it is they need to keep comparing between bus and train. Like, why would you take the bus over taking the train? And then how is it different? Effective atmospheres, the immediate mobilities. So then I think I responded with like, okay, in short, you are able to get a seat on one, whereas where in the train during peak hours you are sardine, and then if you happen to be on the double-decker bus on 963, you can get a nice view. How do people interact on a train? Do they even interact at all versus on a single deck bus or double deck bus? And the human element of a driver in control versus the more or less automatic train. Even GOA3 is already considered like really, really automatic, but we can just take it as automatic anyway. You know what? I'm gonna just close that tab because I don't want to expose people anymore. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. Okay, so this is not talking about buses in general, but it's like possible urban mobility patterns. It's like organized, disorganized, and stuff like that. So basically, they are saying cities can structurally be classified as polycentric, more common, or monocentric, and major urban mobility flows as organized or disorganized, more common. Flows can be classified as primary, reflecting main road and transit corridors converging towards main employment and population areas, and as secondary, often linking subcenters, which I have no idea what that means, but basically it means there is a center, and then outside that center there are like smaller hubs that are outside the circle, the center, or something along those lines. Cities with a higher reliance on public transit tend to be more monocentric, like this, with a higher level of organized flows. This means that, like, let's say, how do I put it? It's like everybody takes train to the city. I mean, not train, but it's like whatever whatever mode of transport it is, be it train, bus, or even you're driving, there's a larger tendency for this flow of traffic to be more organized, basically. And even if it's disorganized, it could be also because people are just like commuting within like the city center. Again, walking, buses, trains, driving, cycling, anything. While cities depending more on automobile tend to be polycentric with a more disorganized structure of flows. Okay, so basically, because when you own a private vehicle, you're able to go wherever you want, right? So it all results in this basically. And it's just that some cities they tend to be more organized. Like there are actually fixed patterns, whatever mode of transit you use. But then again, if it's like this city doesn't really have like buses or trains or whatever, then people just their commutes are like way more random in some sense. It's not like you're cramming people into one single train or one single bus or anything. People tend to like be more spread out, and even in the way they commute, it's like all spread out kind of thing, polycentric. Okay, I kind of get what this means, but if you relate it to the bus context, do you guys realize that this is talking about CDS, City Direct Buses? It's all like this. Whereas within the city center, oh shit, actually, how do I say this? You see all these like little arrows like which are pointing towards like secondary flow. I think they just represent like the different. Okay, I know this is like not Singapore doesn't really have a geographical center, as in like the CBD is actually the geographical center. No, the CBD is actually at Shenton Way, which is like down here. So imagine these all didn't exist. But yeah, basically this is just trying to say that this one is CDS. This one is more of like you have all your buses that go inside Orchard, Little India, Chinatown, Suntec, Bayfront, Shenton Way, and all these things. And then basically it's like okay, from the towns they bring you to the city center. You know routes like 190, 960, 972. What else can I think of? Like service 82, 7, 14, 16, 65, 64, 139, 851, 167, 980, and stuff like that. These all represent like the bigger ones. This one looks more like CDS, even though that's not the main purpose of this article. And then the rest, it's more of like commuting within the city center. Like let's say your service 400 or like you're taking a train. Yeah, these can be trains as well. It's like can be taking. Okay, where's that image? Basically, you see all these like, oh shit, you see all these like secondary flow stuff, right? It can be referring to like all the MRT lines like within like you're just traveling within the city center like that kind of thing. Whereas oh sorry, I don't know what I'm saying. Whereas when you're pointing towards like the primary flow, it can be either MRT or it can be bus as well. Like this could be TEL, this could be DTL, this could be NSL, this could be NEL, this could be what the fuck is that? DTL in the other direction, East West line. And then you can think of this one as like the circle line. Or even the buses that like operate within the city. You could say 18 sorry, you could say 186 for example, because you know 186 is like right? Or even 131 is like something on those lines. Yeah, you can see it that way. This one is more of like if everybody took taxi and then their commutes would be more random. Maybe this is like a bigger city. Maybe this is like a city whereby, let's say, the in-between areas are like forest, hill, forest. Hong Kong, maybe Hong Kong. I don't know. Like just giving an example of stuff. But This is basically what the article means, and who wrote this article, never mind. You could find it at this website. Yeah, this website. Possible urban mobility patterns. Let me just read everything, because this, again, I'm doing this video totally unscripted. I mean, it's a little bit scripted, but it's more or less unscripted. Since transportation can produce significant benefits but creates many negative externalities, appropriate policies can be devised to maximize benefits and minimize inconveniences. The allocation, design, and construction of transport infrastructure and services must be subject to careful planning, both by public and private agencies. A distinction must be drawn between policy and planning, since the former, which is a policy, usually relates the strategies and the goals, while the latter, planning, refers to concrete actions. Oh yeah, because this is like macro and this is like micro, if in some sense. Policies and planning are constantly changing because they both must reflect the fundamental changes in society and contemporary issues and problems. Yeah, correct. It's like, let's say the demographics within the town changes. How do you reroute your buses and trains within the same town? For instance, the changing orientation of public policy led to deregulation in many transport sectors, meaning from government to control, if I'm not mistaken, they become private or whatever. Transport safety and security have come to the forefront among the core policy issues. Because of deregulation, that's why they have to like step up. Natural and anthropogenic. If I were to paraphrase this word, this basically means human effect. This is natural. This is caused by humans. Anthro is like a word that describes a prefix that is related to human beings, I think. I'm not good with big words. Disruption, the natural and human disruptions are also challenges in transport planning. Like for example, why did the Service 300 amendment get rejected? Because at this bus stop, you're able to take 67, 188, 974, 976, and same stop transfer to Service 300, which brings you like this. So you do not have to cross over, or you do not have to go to Chua Chu Kang interchange. You can just board 300 here. I've explained this before, but this is basically just an example of natural meaning how the roads are shit. No, I mean like your is Singapore flat or hilly, that kind of thing. It affects what kind of roads you build. And then human effect. Could be talking about roads, could be talking about human behavior affecting transport planning, the challenges in it, like how do we cater to everyone without sandbagging them too much, basically. Then what is this talking about? So the authors are these people. You know what? I'm just gonna like, okay, it's quite a long article. The terms policy and planning are used very loosely and are frequently interchangeable. However, substituting one for the other is misleading because, as I've told you guys before, one is macro, one is micro. Policy and planning represent separate parts of an overall process of intervention. There are circumstances whereby where policy may be developed without any direct planning implications. It's just a policy as a guideline, and planning is frequently undertaken outside of any direct policy context. This is why I tell you, don't just amend bus routes on your own invented policies. You need to apply it to different contexts. However, precise definitions are not forthcoming, and the following are suggested. Transport, basically, this is just whatever I've explained. Policy deals with developing a set of constructs and propositions, just very, very, very general guidelines that are established to achieve specific objectives relating to social, economic, and environmental conditions. Again, just a guideline and the functioning and performance of the transport system. Transport planning deals with basically everything that is like detailed. Specific problems. The goal of transport policy is to make effective decisions, including managing and regulating stuff like this. Thus, transport policy can be concomitantly, I'm sorry, a public and private endeavor since undertaken within an organizational context. This refers to like buses or trains. How do you allocate your resources? Still, governments are often the most involved in the policy process since they either own the assets or have power over existing transportation modes. Basically, they dictate stuff, and governments often perceive that it is their role to manage it. Because it is a public service, it is essential. They're in addition to imposing a regulatory framework, which is basically just a how they manage stuff in general. Yeah, many transport systems, such as maritime and air transportation, are privately owned. However, there are substantial geographical variations, blah blah blah. The standard rule is that the public sector usually provides infrastructure and the regulatory framework, while the private sector assumes the provision and it's like BCM basically. So government regulates, but the private companies themselves they operate based on how the government dictates stuff like that. With globalization and deregulation, the private sector has much leverage in the policy process through asset allocation decisions, like how buses transfer from one depot to another. Like, I want this bus model, I want the other bus model, and stuff like that. Public policy is the means which governments attempt to reconcile social, political, and economic and environmental goals and aspirations with reality. These goals and expectations change as the society evolves, as and thus the feature of policy is its changing form and character. Which is true. Policy isn't really fixed or anything. You could change it. And they did specify that it is highly encouraged to change it according to the times, basically. A major distinction between planning and policy is that the latter, policy has a stronger relationship with legislation, like basically whatever it has to do with like the law and stuff like that. Like all buses must be of certain specifications, like must be how long, how tall, blah blah blah. Policies are frequently, though not exclusively, incorporated into laws and other legal instruments that serve as a framework for developing private interventions. Policies are frequently that serve, yeah, because it's like a framework for developing. I'm sorry, it's not private planning interventions because you plan based on your policy. Planning does not necessarily involve having to like read the rule book, and is more focused on achieving something very specific, often within said policy. So yeah, this is basically what they're talking about, and stuff like this. The relevance of transport policy. Transport policies arise because of the importance of transport in virtually every aspect of the blah 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 is undertaken by governments of all inclinations, even those that are interventionalist to the most liberal, as a vital factor into economic development. Basically, they go hand in hand, and it's like a basic right kind of thing. Transportation is key in promoting, developing, and shaping the national economy. Many development programs, such as this program Appalachia and the Trans-European Networks policy in the EU, and they seek to promote transport infrastructure and services where private capital investment or services may not be forthcoming. Like if something is lacking, that's why they want to promote it. Something. Paradoxically, the links between transport and economic development are sometimes questionable. Why are our ITHs so small? Because the URA or the private developers are a piece of shit. They want more space for their mall as compared to having enough space for ITH. So this is basically what they're trying to say. Transport frequently is an issue in national security. Policies are developed to establish sovereignty or okay, this is very very theory. Interstate highway security was at the heart of the more recent impositions. Oh, passengers or freight clearance. The port of departure. Subject to scrutiny and restrictions. Freight was also much less restricted. Then, most countries only allowed admittance to Okay. So this is just limitations or something along those lines. Transport raises many questions about public safety and the environment. Public safety issues have for a long time led to the development of policies requiring driving licenses, limiting the working hours of drivers, imposing equipment standards, establishing speed limits, and mandating highway codes, seatbelts, and other accident controls. More recently, environmental standards and control measures have been instituted in response to the growing awareness of the environment, and examples include banning stuff or mandating Euro 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, basically what I'm talking about. And the whole stuff about like decarbonization, hybrid buses, silly B5LH. Transport policy has been developed to prevent or control the inherent monopolistic tendency of many transport modes. Unrestrained competition commonly leads to market dominance by a company. Does this really refer to like a time whereby SBS own all the routes? Actually, no. This is not monopoly. Wait, I'm a bit confused. Monopoly power, SBS Transit having control over the routes. Unrestrained competition, meaning if like there is a big company named SBS and then there are like many other small companies, they compete, and then if one person is stronger, they would almost get monopoly, something along those lines. Such dominance brings into question many issues affecting public interest, such as like, does SBS only is SBS only interested in competing or actually providing good bus services or like good bus routes, such as access, like availability, your bus frequencies, price, your premium bus services, your city shopper bus services, your 502, 506, 518, and stuff like that. If it goes unregulated, obviously SBS Transit can technically charge $10 per ride or something along those lines. I mean, even then, the governing body back then was like, was like Public Transport Council. So yeah. Other reasons for policy intervention include the desire to limit foreign ownership of such a vital industry for concerns that the system would be sidetracked to serve more foreign than national interests. Basically saying that we should only have the local companies as SBS and SMRT. I mean, just an example of, I'm just trying to break down what this is trying to say. For example, blah, 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 not relevant to Singapore. Other countries have similar restrictions. This challenges the growth and expansion of transnational managers and operations of transportation assets and large financial institutions supporting them, such as sovereign wealth fund. I'm sorry, this is too complicated for me to understand. I'm so sorry. In recent years, four trends have significant consequences. One of them is globalization, deregulation, and privatization. Privatization. I cannot talk. Privatization. A broader focus of policies, a more towards social and political issues. I think this is all like very uh it's all very standard in some sense. Do I really need to go into it? Policy instruments. Governments have a large number of instruments at their disposal to carry out transport policies. Some are direct, such as public ownership, but the majority are indirect, such as safety standards. The most common are a vital instrument concerns public ownership, direct control by the state of this stuff is widespread. Most common is a provision of public agencies, such as roads, ports, airports, and canals. Public ownership also includes airlines, railways, ferries, urban transit by public agencies. Subsidies also, private railroad companies. Yeah, this is just very American. I mean, I could talk about Japan, but I think you know where this is going anyway. Dredging of ship canals and providing other marine services such as pilotage and navigation aids are subsidies to facilitate shipping. Most public transit systems are subsidized to provide mobility since the full cost recovery would make fares unaffordable to the poorer segments of the population. I mean, this is quite self-explanatory, right? Both public and ownership and that require revenue generation is becoming an increasingly important instrument in transport policy. Farebox recovery rate, regulatory control. represents a means of influencing the level, the shape of transportation that is widely employed. By setting up public agencies, they may control entry and exit, controlling which firms can offer transport services at what prices and to which markets. I think like the premium bus services, environmental regulations as well. Many governments are major promoters of R&D. You can just read the sector. I'm not interested in this. Labor regulations, basically talking about like your bus captain welfare, safety and operating standards as well. It's very self-explanatory. Common issue concerning policy instruments is that they have unintended consequences, indirect effects. Like when you tax or you subsidize, it could influence one mode to the advantage of others, even if they are more efficient. So let's say I got I got bus 506 that charges $10. I'm exaggerating. And bus 985 that charges 50 cents. Which one will you take? That kind of thing. There's a risk in selecting a proper alternative is the outcome of a policy decision instead of market forces. I don't really get it, but at the same time, I kind of get where this is heading. Public policies reflect the interests of decision makers and their approaches to solving transport problems. These interests and approaches are place specific, time specific. Policies are dynamic, they change. The dynamic nature is reflected in this example. Turnpikes, canals, urban transit, ships, railways. However, this situation was not entirely without public policy involvement, and then which sometimes leads to a growing degree of government involvement in the transport industry, offset market failures. Okay, jurisdictional conflicts to ensure that services could be maintained for the sake of the public good. Okay, it's relevant. Municipally controlled transit commissions, Yokohama Shiei Bus, Kawasaki Shiei Bus, airline industries, nationalization of railways, consolidation of existing lines into national systems. GNR. Okay. And yeah. Governments eventually capture many segments of the private transport sector, and then it also regulates stuff. And then this is just a bit of history if you want to read up on it. I think this is still examples. I don't know. This is like all very Western centric. I don't really know how to say this. Public finance crisis in many countries. The cost of operating the state-owned transportation would also seem to be unsustainable. So this leads to sometimes the deprivatization. So it's like JNR becoming JR, something along those lines. And then there is like what, East, West, Central, Hokkaido, Kyushu, Shikoku. The theory of contestability, repudiated. I didn't even know this was an actual word. Repudiated traditional economic theory concerning monopoly power by arguing that the threat of entry of a new actor was sufficient to thwart a monopolist's ability to impose monopoly pricing, which is the SBS Transit example that I talked about just now, I think. The key was to relax entry thresholds, allowing new firms to set up, a process that the regulatory boards were impeding, like they were stopping. And then examples. Yeah, like the JNR become JR thingy. Changing nature of policy interventions. The trends in transport policy in recent decades have been toward liberalization and privatization. This has not necessarily weakened the role of governments and their interventions in the transportation, quite the opposite. Government regulatory oversight is well established and enforced. Controls, like PTC, for example, in the old era, controls over monopoly power are still in place. Like basically, SBS is not allowed to whine in an SMRT town. SMRT is not allowed to whine in an SBS town, that kind of thing. And even in the most liberal of economies, there is still a governing body. Ownership of ports and airports, highway provision, upgrade and maintenance, okay, mergers, acquisitions, and alliances. This one is also quite self-explanatory as well. Government policy orientations have changed, but they are exerting greater control over your emission standards, because biofuel policies aimed at ethanol producing using corn. The unintended consequence was a surge in global food prices as more corn was being used to produce ethanol as opposed to feeding people. If I am interpreting this correctly, sustainability has become significant. Coastal zone legislation examples. Despite economic justification, the prices are the projects are subject to assessments whether they are destroying the environment or not, and this is why Singapore should stop cutting down so many forests just to build your fucking HDB towns. Decarbonization has also become okay. I think this is just the same thing. Okay. While there have been some reduction of policy involvement involving economic regulations, influence of public policy on transport overall. Oh, wait, sorry. So yeah, this is the credits. Still powerful, but contentious. What? Common problems linked with government intervention. Bureaucracy, accountability, misallocations, corruption, overreach. I think this is all very, very, yeah. It's all very self-explanatory. You can read up on this. Oops, did I mess up? It must be acknowledged that capital investment by governments in where am I? Shit. It must be acknowledged that capital investment by governments in transport infrastructure commonly follows multiple and sometimes conflicting policy goals. This is actually quite normal. It happens more often than you think. It's also the conflict of interest thingy, like, URA bullying LTA, for example. The usual outcome is that projects with multiple policy goals, they reduce their economic benefit because of conflicting goals. Policy in general, transport policy is driven by a value system that reflects aspirations. When the value system changes, it can generate discrepancies between the concrete conventional policy goals or value creation and stuff that is actually subjective, meaning like you change a policy, but what implications does it have on the people, basically. Okay, what else is this? Actually, wait. Oh my god. Okay, this is very economic based. I don't want to go into this because I know nothing about economics. So if you want to read this article, I mean, look at this. It's like what? Private participation in transport infrastructure causes and forms of public divestiture. I don't know what that means. Privatization and financing models, limitations of private capital, private public partnerships. Oh god, this is like so complicated for me. This is why I will never be able to enter university. I don't want to wreck my brain reading all these stuff. I just want to talk about, please don't amend this bus service because it has consequences, or please amend because there is potential. I don't want to be talking about this, man. Like legit. Okay, if you want the if you want the link, it's like here. Here. Okay, what does 9.2 talk about? Purpose of planning. Transport planning usually addresses specific problems or broad transport concerns at a local level, which has been traditionally a preoccupation of lower tier governments, state, county, municipal. I am not familiar with this. I am so sorry. Based on this fact, I know Japan kind of has like stuff like this, but it's very complicated. Because of this fact, transport planning is most developed in the urban sphere, and is and it is there where most experience has been gathered, and not really the rural areas you mean. Planning process has several similarities with the policy process. Identify a problem, seek options, implement the strategy. It also deals with localized problems, and the solutions tend to be more exact than directives, basically, is what we've explained. The common perspective is that planning is the realm of the public sector, although the private sector owns and operates the objective. So it's like the private sector owns and operates, but like the planning is a realm of the public sector, is what they're trying to say. This implies that planning can be undertaken by transport actors such as carriers to manage their assets at a scale beyond that of the public sector. Okay, that's something I learned today, even though I don't necessarily know how to explain it to you guys. I cannot really think of an example from the top of my head that would make it easier for you guys to understand. Time horizon, strategic planning, tactical planning, operational planning. Okay, this is just the intro. Top down, bottom up. Okay, I don't really need to say this. This is like both when you take into account of both. Time horizon. Conventionally, planning was a field dominated by engineers who gave it a distinctly mechanistic character. The planning process was considered very rigorous, measure likely impacts and propose engineering solutions and their financing. There were four major steps: transport planning, trip generation, trip distribution, modal split, route selection. Planning evolved to rely on something I'm not good at, including math, software used as components of this thing. They are only as good as the data they manipulate based on assumptions. Aha! When LTA tries to manipulate their time savings by MRT. Aha! Basically, the predictions were rarely subjected to subsequent evaluation. Their validity is largely questioned. They can predict the future. They rarely question the validity, even when they turn out to be highly inaccurate. Okay, the prediction of future traffic levels produced by the four-stage sequence are often used to identify planning options. The most common prediction of the modeling is that present capacities will be unable to cope with the expected traffic growth. The tendency has been to produce planning solutions that call for making your 6-car train into an 8-car. Just an example. This has been referred to as a predict and accommodate. Given rise to the this was a thing in the past. Given to the rise of expansion of highway construction that reinforced the dominance of the automobile. Okay, this is just a general statement. I don't know if this. I don't think this is saying anti-car or what. This is just saying a general statement. Like, induced demand has distorted traffic outcomes since additional capacity incites additional traffic. I think you guys can kind of understand what this means. Contemporary transport planning is commonly scale specific and multidimensional. In cities, traffic problems have increased significantly despite urban planning. There is a growing realization that perhaps planning has failed, the wrong questions have been asked, rather than estimate traffic increases and provide the capacity to tackle these issues, the expected growth. It is now accepted that what is required is, in general, better management, maintenance, new approaches to planning, just as urban planning requires the input of many specialists. Transport planning uses a multidisciplinary perspective to broaden the scope of the planning process. Planning is such a multi-step process, but it has changed considerably. Goals and objective, options, identification of actors, institutions, and stakeholders. Okay, this is quite self-explanatory as well. Predicting outcomes, identifying benefits, and assessing costs. This is what you need to think of when creating bus routes. I'm not going to read all of this, but this is basically what it's referring to. Choosing a course of actions. Do you amend this bus route or do you amend another bus route? Stuff like that. And then this is like the whole flow chart of things. The vast ponder, I think the root word is ponder. Before you ponder, preponderance of, I don't know what this means. Transport planning, particularly at the urban level, has been devoted to passengers involving road transportation and public transit. The blah blah blah, the mobility of free city logistics, large private sector activity. It's difficult to control, and the industry itself makes many of the decisions that affect trucking. You drive trucks. The emergence of large distribution centers on the outer fringes of metropolitan areas, basically like your Jurong, Woodlands, Pongo, Tampines, Bedok, stuff like that, taking place without much public control or oversight. But this is not really Singapore context. This is much more related to the Western cities. The models and data used are of limited relevance when applied to the mobility of freight. Demographic data such as household size, backbone of passenger analysis are irrelevant to freight flows within the manufacturing sector. I think you kind of get it, right? However, it matters for home deliveries. The uh, I don't know how to condense this, but yeah, a much greater focus on fleet planning is required since fleet distribution is an important concept of urban mobility and activities where facilities such as distribution centers, ports, airports, and rail yards. Is this a verb or did they typo important components? I'm sorry. In questioning the paradigm of I don't know what this word means of building capacity, transport planners have turned increasingly to managing both demand and transport system. Building roads have produced a blah blah blah. Uh, okay, this one it depends on the context. This is just saying from a very, 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 very general point of view. This is why a great deal of attention is densification and integration. But then again, you don't force an area to become more dense or anything. This is just a general statement anyway. This is all policy in essence. Oh, this is basically reviving old towns that have died off. Detroit? Maybe? I don't know. Managing the demand for transport is made up of a large number of small interventions that, when they all add up together, can impact demand, but in particular improve the livability of cities, accessibility as well. Park and ride, talked about this before. Traffic calming, basically your silver zones. Yeah, it's a silver zone. This is talking about bus lanes as well as like truck routing as well because they are free. It's good to have a dedicated free route as well. Singapore doesn't really need it, but in other countries they actually need it because there is demand for like all the deliveries. Like some cases you can use free trains. Other cases you have to you can use like trucks like free. Just depends on the context anyway. Teleworking and alternate work schedules. This is quite self-explanatory as well. Promoting micro mobility, basically, uh, stuff that doesn't include like vehicles, basically. Car sharing, enhancing pedestrian areas as well. How you design them. Self-explanatory. Parking management as well. Restriction on street parking and charging higher rates for parking, stuff like that. Pricing as well. While planning interventions may positively affect transport demand, a more direct approach involving imposing more stringent cost measures on users can be an option. For instance, it is widely accepted that car users pay only a small proportion of the actual cost of their vehicle use. And then economists argue that users should bear the external costs and not just like whatever cost that they have right now of their mobility. As rational as this argument may be, there are several problems with its application. difficulties in measuring externalities like this, practical difficulties in collecting these costs. It's something to do with like fair collection, but this is like in a different context. Imposing additional costs on the public. I think it'll get a lot of backlash basically. Congestion pricing, basically your ERP and stuff like that. Oh, they did say COE. Okay. Imposition, ERP again. ERP again. Yeah. Governance and transportation, which is associated with the practical use of existing resources, as well as the allocation of new resources, your bus routes. Governance, I mean, the definition is here. Governance of transport is particularly relevant because of its strategic, economic, and social importance. Transport is not a mere convenience, but a fundamental service, that kind of thing. This is where governance plays an important role of ensuring continuity, sustainability, basically. Confidence, capital cost, competitiveness. Improves the capability to compete through retention of existing users and the attraction of new ones. Lower costs, clear expectations, transparency, keeping market considerations, better governance, usually more competitive than organizations with less effective governance. Yeah, how you manage basically. Okay, more of like how companies manage themselves. Stability, long-term resilience, network resilience. Like, don't just depend on MRT, you gotta depend on bus as well. That kind of thing. For transport infrastructure such as port terminals, airports, highways, inland ports, or logistic zones, many different forms of governance are in place which shape models of financing, operations, functioning, and external relationships. This includes mechanisms and options for the respective roles of public and private actors in the ownership, management, and operation of transport infrastructure and terminals. This is particularly large as large transport infrastructure involved in global flows of passengers and freight that are complex, capital intensive, and of strategic importance to economic welfare of regions. Therefore, the capital intensiveness and the long lifespan, the sustainability of transport infrastructure underlines the need for effective governance to ensure that there is adequate funding, maintenance, operator, and expansion. Public ownership, private ownership, operations, public control, private companies. Public ownership and operations have been important in many modes because of the strategic importance of transport and the long-term investments required that the private sector may be incapable or unwilling to make. Like a premium bus routes, for example. Like in this way, the terminals can be owned and operated as public goods and integrated with regional and national economic policies. On the other hand, public facilities are seen as slow to respond to market conditions, with a propensity, what the hell does that mean, to overinvest in non-economic developments, high user costs. The default commonly leaves the governance structure as it is, since inertia is what usually takes place for managing large infrastructures, because it's large scale. So yeah. Okay, this is shorter. Okay, this is more of for like transport security in general. Physical security as well. I don't think I need to like go into detail about this because this is something that you can read up on. Yeah. But yeah, this is one thing that you have to learn if you want to take up like modules like this. Okay. Transportation disruptions and resilience. Oh, okay. Transportation systems are designed to operate under defined conditions, like let's say you're not able to run train frequencies of higher than 107 seconds, even though the system is able to take 90-second frequencies. To be safe, you have a leeway and you run it at a maximum of 107 seconds. With criteria such as Basically what I didn't even read the article. I kind of know what it's like gonna talk about. Yet disruptions caused by accidents or nature are frequent and well mitigated. There is a level of tolerance to disruption built to transportation infrastructure and your operations. Okay, like for example, when it snows heavily in Japan, carriers are accustomed to mitigating disruptions, recurring ones, even if randomness plays a role, troubleshooting and stuff like that. Yes, emergencies can be handled by local resources, but a disaster requires a broader intervention that could go to the national and even international levels. So transportation is often considered a critical infrastructure because it's a public uh, good, it's a public need, that kind of thing. And yeah, increased mobility, even if the risk factors remain similar, if there's more activity, there's a higher chance that there will be more disruptions. Yeah, it's like more people will be affected when the train breaks down or a bus breaks down, that kind of thing. Infrastructure and economic interdependency. This is very, I don't think I need to elaborate this. Centralization and concentration of distribution. Global trade is articulated by major gateways, strategic passages. Oh, this is talking about ships. Urbanization, concentrations on populations, disruption affecting an urban area is compounding its impacts on par with whatever. Yeah, more people, more disruption, basically. Yeah. And then road networks, because of their mass structure, road networks are not highly vulnerable to disruptions unless this disruption is at a wide scale. Rail networks. Whilst linear rail networks are vulnerable to disruptions, complex rail and transit networks have a mesh-like structure, making them more resilient. It doesn't have to be rail. Basically, if I were to like draw it out, okay, I'll just use a new site, new slide. When you have more options, the lines can be bus or train routes. They are more network resilient. Ha ha, ha ha. You get what I'm talking about. Because there is Tsukuba Express, there is Joban Line. If one dies, you're screwed. If one dies, you're screwed. You have no other alternative. But whereas in Tokyo, the city center, it's more like this structure, right? So that's why you have alternative buses, you have alternative trains. Pretty much. And then there's even Chuo Line, KO Line, stuff like that. Or even like Shonan Shinjuku Line, Tokaido Line, Tokyo Toyoko Line, Tokyo Toyoko Line, Tokyo Denentoshi Line, Odakyu Line, blah 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 blah. They all take you from to the southwest, that kind of thing. This is what like transport resilience is talking about. Network resilience. Yeah. With the increasing reliance on distribution systems, any failure in transportation due to intentional or non-intentional causes, natural disasters, or somebody's trying to sabotage the system, readiness, supply, vulnerability, illegal use of transportation, flexibility, redundancy, what I talked about, natural disruptions like extreme weather events, geophysical, okay, geomagnetic storms, climate change, like your rising sea levels and stuff like that, human disruption, disruptions caused by humans, technical failures, human errors, your MKBF in the Singapore train context, lack of maintenance, improper management, design flaws, handling more traffic than designed. Bridges and similar structures are particularly vulnerable. Even bridges as well, because it's like bridges. If you if you exceed the weight limit of the bridge might just collapse. Yeah, that's why. Elevators as well. Economic and political shocks. Inflation, rendering the transport system more prone to risks such as accidents and infrastructural failure causes like the lack of capital would lead to lack of capital for construction maintenance and oversight. So yeah, this sanitary planning for transport disruptions. This is talking about freight, right? Yeah, this is talking about freight. Risk management, assessment, preparedness, mitigation, response, recovery. This is all very relevant. It's just like it's quite wordy, so I'm just gonna leave it as it is. Just gonna let you guys see. Please pause the video if you want to read. Managing the resilience opens the door for public-private partnerships. I think there is like an article actually talking about this just now, but I didn't really go into it because it was like way too complicated for me to understand. However, recovery is contingent upon the availability of capital equipment and managerial expertise. Like for example, SBS doesn't have a technician, right? So when 8008L's articulator has issues, they needed to call SMRT to fix the bus. But I mean, SBS is leasing the bendy buses from SMRT, so that's why they have to do it. But this basically refers to the availability thing. Therefore, recovery is much faster in. Okay, I'm sorry. My link was a little bit off, but like, it is just a general statement. As there are geographical differences in the risk and exposure to disruptions, there are also geographical differences in mitigating and recovering from disruptions as well. Because of differences in infrastructure quality, more stringent building standards, and effective governance, a similar disruption in a developing economy is likely to have more impact than in developed economy. These differences may even be reflected at the urban level, depending on their spatial structure. Cities may be impacted differently by a similar disruption because of the quality of the infrastructure and their built-in resilience. Irrespective of the disruption, transportation systems can be a vector for the transport disruption and an important component in the resilience building process. Very which is basically very general stuff. So basically, okay, I'm done with this, but my friend was basically suggesting routes for his commute that he could that he could survey based on his own assignment requirements. So I helped him with that. And then he also shared with me like actual transport theory. So I gave it to you. Holy shit, this video is like 1 hour. I think I'm just gonna end here because this is just my raw attempt at trying to understand transport theory. So it's meant to be unscripted. So bye bye.